If they are going to use this as a marketing strategy, where do they begin? How's that?
Yeah. And I think it starts with the mindset, right, of what you're looking to do. Podcasting is a very small community still. It's also a very relatable one, right? Charlatans get seen very quickly. So if you have the attitude to go in there and I'm going to use and abuse audiences, you will pollute this medium forever. And we've had clients that have come to us, and I can think of one that she had worked with somebody and they did like 100 interviews, right? And she never followed up with the host, never promoted it. And then they came and said, can you help us? And I'm like, you have got such a bad reputation out there. No, I can't. So I would think the first way is to think, how can I use this as an educational tool to address my clients' problems, to speak to them, to build that know, like, and trust. It's a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? If you want results tomorrow, buy some Facebook ads, but it's going to be like a newspaper ad, right? It's in the trash the next day. One of the things that I love about content, and specifically this content, is the people that have a long-term view about it, that talk about things that are timely but timeless. They're getting clients and leads for years and years, right? I don't know if it's evergreen, but I always say podcast interviews are like a can of soup. It's good for 3 to 5 years.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Halloran. Pre-COVID, or BC as I like to call it, before COVID, I interviewed our guest. His name is Tom. He owns and co-founded a company called Interview Valet. And since then, lots of stuff has changed in the world of podcasting. But the one thing that hasn't changed is all of your desires to get on other people's shows and try to use that as an effective marketing tool. Now, if you have had interactions with me and you've asked me this question, I have referred you to Tom and Interview Valet. And the reason why is because I get hit with about 50 requests every week to just my personal email about people guesting on the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. And they're terrible. I delete them all. I report all of them as spam. Then my team gets about another 100. And so the reason why I want to have Tom on the show today is to have him impart his wisdom on how you can not only figure out where you should go, how to be a great guest, and some of the tips and tricks to make it so that they're going to want you potentially on shows again and make it so that you have a better appearance on other people's podcasts. Tom, welcome to the show.
Matt, I am thrilled to be here. And as you were saying that, I get about 5 pitches a day to be on my show. And this was before I had a show. Everybody loved it and wanted to be a guest. And I just had an autoresponder after a while where I would just say, great, if you can give me the link to your favorite show, I'll give you the calendar scheduling link. Let's make this happen. I figure if nothing else, slow them down for a little bit. But there's a right way to do it and to be an asset to the podcast and really use it as a marketing tool to grow your brand and grow your business.
Well, and it can be such an effective marketing tool. In fact, we have built our entire business on bringing guests on our show. And then our secondary market for us and our brand here at ProudMouth is for Kirk and or myself to be on other people's podcasts. What do you see is like the biggest and best and most key piece of advice that you could talk to financial advisors about preparing or whatever they should be doing in order to make it so that when they engage you, because this isn't just a big sales pitch for people to use you, even though I love your organization. If they are going to use this as a marketing strategy, where do they begin? How's that?
Yeah. And I think it starts with the mindset, right, of what you're looking to do. Podcasting is a very small community still. It's also a very relatable one, right? Charlatans get seen very quickly. So if you have the attitude to go in there and I'm going to use and abuse audiences, you will pollute this medium forever. And we've had clients that have come to us, and I can think of one that she had worked with somebody and they did like 100 interviews, right? And she never followed up with the host, never promoted it. And then they came and said, "Can you help us?" And I'm like, "You have got such a bad reputation out there.
Mm.
No, I can't." So I would think the first way is to think, how can I use this as an educational tool to address my clients' problems, to speak to them, to build that know, like, and trust. It's a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? If you want results tomorrow, buy some Facebook ads, but it's going to be like a newspaper ad, right? It's in the trash the next day. One of the things that I love about content, and specifically this content, is the people that have a long-term view about it, that talk about things that are timely but timeless. They're getting clients and leads for years and years, right? I don't know if it's evergreen, but I always say podcast interviews are like a can of soup. It's good for 3 to 5 years.
Well, one of the things that we've really noticed is, you do guest on a show that becomes more and more popular. The probability of them going back and listening to previous episodes is really, really high. And so if you, in it, I love, because I've been asked to come back on shows that I guested on, much like me wanting you to come back on our show because you added so much value previously. But part of that has to do with strategy. So is that something that you can help our audience maybe tick a couple of boxes so that when they do decide to take the strategy on, they'll be more prepared?
Yeah, and really it's start with the end in mind, right? What are you trying to do with this? The goal is not to be on a podcast. That's an ego thing. The goal is not to have a podcast. That can be an ego thing too. And the problem is you start with that, and when it doesn't become fun anymore, you stop and you go on to the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, and you never get results with it. So the strategy is, what am I trying to do with this? And different people have different goals for it. Some of them want to use it to launch a speaking business. Some of them want to use it to raise their brand, to raise their authority, to go into a different market so they can get some exposure there. Ultimately, most people want it for leads that close faster, for a higher initial engagement. And all the studies have shown that, because it's really based on a relationship sale, not not just a transaction. So taking that strategy step, and stepping back and thinking why and what am I going to do that gets me to this? Too often, and I'll admit it, right? There's people that are ready, aim, fire. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, can we just fire and walk the rounds in, right? So I'm always big on action, right? Patience is a virtue, but it's not one I have.
Mhm.
But what I look at is, why am I doing this? Will this make a difference a year from now, 2 years from now? Is this the best use of my time? Because all of us have a limited amount of resources. I don't care if you're just starting out or you're the number one producer in the US. You've got a limited number of dollars and of hours. So you want to make sure that every appearance you get the most out of. And that's really where the strategy comes into it. I joke, and I see so many people that they're just throwing stuff up against the
Mhm.
wall, and then they're not even measuring what's sticking on the wall. It's almost like, well, if I talk to enough people, I'll find a customer. Well, that's not marketing, right? Go to downtown Chicago. Just start talking to strangers. You'll find a customer or get locked up, one of the two.
Well, I mean, in financial services specifically, the law of large numbers was what a lot of us were raised on, right? You make 10,000 phone calls, you get 100 appointments, you get 10 pieces of business. That's sales. What we're talking about today is using podcasting as a marketing tool. So I like the idea of keeping the end in mind, and I definitely like the idea of keeping it evergreen. But how do you help people make the decision based off of those two things if guesting is the right way to go?
Yeah. And really, it starts with what the goals are and then looking at it. And we've got 10 years of experience here. We've helped over 1,500 clients, and we've seen what works and what doesn't work. And we can help, because ultimately our goal is to get results, not just to get random interviews.
Mm.
So what we're looking at is, do you have a point of view? Do you have a story to tell? Are you focused on your client's story or your own story? And I'll tell you what, your client story is a lot more interesting and relatable because people will hear, oh, that sounds like me. That sounds like a friend of mine. I've got to tell them about that. Then we'll also look at what people that you want to talk to. So often I'll hear people say, well, I want to go on this retirement podcast, and I want to go on this financial podcast, and I want to go on CNBC. And it's like, why don't you fish where the fish are, not where the competition is? Because that retirement podcast, it's probably hosted by one of your competitors, right? And why would they choose you over this person that they've been listening to and they like? Or if somebody's watching CNBC nonstop, chances are they already think they're smarter than you. So why do you want to go there? It works much better. It's almost thinking about if you want to be the best looking person in the bar, right? Go when nobody else is there, right? So that same thing, right? Going to where your ideal customers are. And we've had clients before that worked with dentists, right? Well, great. Go to dental podcasts and talk about how hard you're working and you want to take some chips off the table and plan for this. Other ones that want to talk to business owners, right? Don't go on retirement podcasts because the clients that you want are not listening to them. Go on small business podcasts. Talk about stories of how you've helped other people. If you like to work with people that are in tech, go to tech podcasts and start to tell these stories on the challenges the individuals had, how you helped them, and then the moral that they can take away from that.
We have something called the perfect content formula here, which is storytelling, education, entertainment, call to action. And every form of long form content you create should have those 4 components. I'm so glad that you brought up storytelling because, one, it really does show your expertise when you can effectively and efficiently communicate what it's like to work with you instead of saying you should work with me. Is a totally different feeling. So the podcasts that you get your clients on, what are they telling you, Tom? So when they, because you have this reciprocal relationship, right? You've got all of these big name podcasts that you have great relationships with, and then you have all of these clients who want to get on the big name podcasts. What are you hearing from the big name podcasts? What are they really looking for, especially from an audience like ours?
Yeah, you think about it. There's 3 types of people they want on their podcast. Their friends, friends of friends, and people they want to be their friends, right? So if you're already friends with them, just call them, right? If you're a celebrity, yeah, they want to have you on. And the reason they want to have you on is to have that following with you. So we really come in where we vouch for our clients, right? We've vetted them, we've trained them. And what they want is they want to make it easy, right? Don't make them connect the dots. Don't give them a 10-page media kit and say, I can talk about finance. No, give me a topic that's applicable to my audience. They're also looking for somebody that's conversational. You mentioned before about people are going to listen to previous interviews. And if you're on low-level podcasts, I call them Wayne's World podcasts. Remember Wayne's World, 2 guys in their mom's basement? Yeah. If they see you on those, they're just going to say, yeah, that's not the caliber of person that I want there. And sometimes working with an agency, it infers that you have a certain quality, right? Same thing with speakers bureaus. If you work with the same speakers bureau that has 4 of the last presidents, you're probably a pretty good speaker. Yeah. So they're looking at that. They're looking to somebody that's going to bring value to their audience, something that someone brings a different insight, a point of view. And then they're looking for helping the people afterwards. And I'm glad you said call to action, because so often I'll listen to someone that's on a podcast and it was very entertaining. It was very educational. And then they come to the end and, say something like, so Matt, any final words? Nope. Just thrilled to be here. Thanks. It's like, how do I get in touch with you? Or the ones that start telling me that you can find me here on Twitter and here on TikTok and all the rest of that. And it's like, do you not understand the medium? I am, okay, walking fast. I won't say running while I'm doing this. I'm not going to remember all of this. So the data and the studies that we've done for over 10 years have shown always give people one place to go, right? Give them one place to go. And the best practice is to make a separate page for every interview. That way you can attribute the traffic. When people say you can't know the results from a podcast, well, if you do it right, you can.
Sure.
And then the other thing is that every digital marketer will tell you one call to action. And I don't disagree with that. But all of the testing we've done with podcast interviews shows that give people 3 ways to say yes always converts best. So give them a small yes, right? Something to come back to the website, right? It could be a checklist, 10 questions to ask yourself. It could be an assessment. Are you ready for retirement, right? Because it doesn't take a lot of time or money, but it brings them a lot of value. Now, the medium, yes, a little bit more time, a little bit more money. It could be a webinar, it could be a book. And then if someone hears you and you are the answer to prayer, don't slow them down in a funnel, right? On that page, say, if you'd like to talk with me, if you'd like to talk with my team, all that stuff is there. That works so much better than go to my website and you can sign up for my newsletter. No one wants a newsletter, right? But if you can give them things that are contextual to the interview, you'll see people moving from being a passive listener to an active visitor to your site, and then ultimately an engaged lead.
Well, we always talk about the owned audience, right? So getting somebody from a rented audience, which podcast players and social media are rented audiences, into your email funnel. And we are huge fans of free giveaway checklists, things of value that will allow people to continue to experience your expertise, but also still feel like you're giving it. And one of the things that I'm a huge fan of a guy named Dr. Robert Cialdini. And one of these days, I'm actually really hoping he knows that I talk about him this much on the show. But he has this thing called the principle of reciprocity. So, you know, if you give me 30 minutes of really free, great information, it's okay for you to ask me to do something. That's the principle of reciprocity. And there are a lot of people, Tom, who've been on our show who've gone one of two extremes. One, they try to sell from their first words out of their mouth, or the second one is they blow the sales opportunity at the end. And I'll publish the people who blow the sales opportunity at the end because, you know, we're going to try, I can do some stuff in post that will help with that. But the people who are selling from the beginning, we don't even publish their episodes because I'm not going to do it. I'm not sorry. So yeah.
And it's one of those secrets out there. If you start to use and abuse an audience, the recording will get lost accidentally. Oh, I'm sorry. We had problems with that. Yeah. The other thing too, is there's a podcaster, DJ Doug Sandler from the Nice Guys on Business. And I loved how he said it. When you're a guest, if you do a good job, you don't have to promote yourself. The host will promote you more than anything. And think about if you went to a live event, right? You're speaking at a conference. Do you want to be up there promoting yourself, or do you want the event organizer to be promoting you, right? There's one that's much, much more painful, or much more painful and profitable.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about results, because I get asked this question all the time, right? How do I quantify the spend of either using our podcasting system or using your guesting system? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, I always look at return on investment of their time and their money, right? Our clients are hardworking, they're smart, but they also realize, as one of them said, Sinatra only sang, right? And I said, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, he could have done all those other things, but he realized the best use of his time was performing. The other thing too is tapping into established networks. We've been doing this for 10 years. You know, the best podcasts, they're getting all kinds of pitches, and yours isn't going to stand out. So having someone introduce you can make it so much easier. And then the other thing too is it's just, I would say we have the data to find the right shows, the relationships to help you get invited, the support to make it easy, and then the process to make it effective. There's those little things that you learn that makes the difference between an appearance and a marketing event. And you don't always know those And so being able to work with somebody that can teach you, it's just those little things that will make the difference. And so that when I always talk about people, if you're just doing it for fun as a hobby, go out there, talk on random podcasts. But if this is a marketing channel, just the same way you wouldn't try any other marketing channel and say, oh, I think I'm going to try some Facebook ads for a while. Good luck. You will spend a lot of money, right? I think I'm going to start writing some content. Never done it before, but my third grade teacher told me I was a good writer. Good luck with that, right? SEO. I don't know what it stands for, but I can figure it out. Good luck, right? You'll spend so much time in that. And our clients are the ones that realize that they're doing this for the results. And, there's different agencies out there. And I always say there's the Craigslist, right? Where you can get on different lists and email lists or tap into a database, and you get a lot of new podcasts and a lot of new guests. And it's a good place to start if it's a hobby, right? But don't expect to get results from that. And then you've got some that are bookers, right? Their whole goal is to get you booked, right? And after that, it's all up to you. And I look at that as an activity. And then you've got ones that look at this as a marketing channel. And this could be high-level PR agencies. This could be boutique agencies like ours at Interview Valet that just focuses on this. But if you want results out of it, you've got to focus on the entire system, not just the fun parts.
Well, let's talk about, so you got the system in place, you know what you're going to talk about. You have done a great job of setting people up to get on the show. What do you tell the person who's going to be a guest in order to prepare for a great show?
Keyword is prepare. So we give all of our clients a brief sheet about the podcast that says, here's the background on the host, the audience, common questions, things to stay away from, right? I can think of one great podcaster. The guy's an environmentalist. He's a surfer. And on the brief sheet, it says, do not mention the sport of golf. If you do, you're guaranteed he's going to go on a tirade why Pebble Beach is killing the ocean and what he thinks of golfers, right? And if you don't know that, you could go in there and change the entire tone of the interview after that. So prepare that. Know who you're talking to. Have an idea of where you're going with this. You don't want this to be a dance where neither person is leading. You're not sure where it's going. It just confuses people. And then remember why you're there. Right? Every story should have a reason. When people ask you, the first question is often, so Matt, tell us about yourself. Nobody wants your bio, right? They want to know, who are you? Why are you here? Why should I listen to you? And those are the things. And we do practice interviews beforehand, not to practice content, but to practice best practices. And then I am a huge fan of watching game film, right? Amateurs just go out there and whack at the ball. Professionals watch the game film, and it's painful at times, but we'll listen to the interviews. We'll watch that so that we can give feedback. Hey, this is really good. This was a problem here. Did you ever think about doing this? And at each one, you want to get better and better. Like I said before, if you just want to, throw stuff at the wall and not see what even sticks, it's a hobby, but don't expect to get results from it.
Well, professionals practice, right? And whether you're going to be a professional financial services professional and a professional presenter and a professional speaker, a professional interviewer, professional podcaster, you really have to take it seriously. One of the things that always makes me giggle is I'll talk to other podcasters and I ask them a question. And I do this when I'm especially going to be a guest on another show. I will say, who are your podcast or interview heroes? And Tom, very few people can answer that question because they're not students of the game. And now I don't expect most people to be as nerdy about podcasting as Kirk and I are, because we built a whole darn company surrounding this, as our platform for long form content. But you really do need to show up. And thank you for saying, watching the tape, going back and seeing how you did with an objective third party to provide you with feedback and guidance on how you can be even better. Now, some people are just going to say, you already alluded to this earlier, so I'm looking for clarification here. As a financial advisor, you probably don't want to be on financial advisor podcasts because you're right. Then you're really technically working with your competition. I'm air quoting there. How would a financial services professional, or what line of question do you ask financial services professionals or people who provide advice for a living on how to figure out what you at Interview Valet are going to try to get them booked on?
Yeah, because that's it. We're looking at the audience, not the podcast. People come and say, oh, I want to be on Joe Rogan. Well, do your clients listen to Joe Rogan? Tell me more about your clients. Well,
Yeah.
they're farmers, they're Midwest, high asset, all the rest of this. It's like they're not listening to Joe Rogan. And before 10 years ago, I got to admit, we were doing podcast guessing. There wasn't a whole lot of data out there. Now there is so much data. Most of it you have to license, right? It's not free, but you can find out different audiences from what websites they go to, what conferences they go to, what influencers they follow. So all of a sudden we'll start talking and saying, okay, tell me about your best clients, ones you'd like more of. Okay. Well, what kind of conferences do they go to? What kind of organizations do they belong to? Oh, they're orthopedic surgeons. Okay, well, let's go to, the Academy of Orthopedic Surgery, right? And see what podcasts those people that go there listen to. It's not all orthopedic surgery ones. Those other ones, and those are the ones that you want to be on. And, without that, it's just podcast guessing. The other thing too, Matt, is sometimes you can use it for market research. And I'll give you an example here. One of our early clients, Craig Cody, he's a high-level CPA, does tax advising. And he came to us and he said, I want 50 different clients in 50 different states and 50 different industries. And I'm like, why? Because he said, last time the downturn, I was brick and mortar on Long Island. And this he's great. He's a retired New York City detective. And so it's like, fine, we start throwing darts at a dartboard. And it's not till we get him on a dental podcast and we look at the numbers on that and the data. And it's like, this was fish in a barrel, right? So we take it to him and he's like, oh yeah, I think I've already got a couple of clients from that. And there's some more calls already from that. And so we looked and said, let's just do dental podcasts. For the next 6 months, all he was doing was dental podcast. He started his own dental business podcast. And with that, with the data, he was able to see, hey, these are my people. This is who resonates with my message. And then he just kept doubling down on that. And plus he had so much content from all of those interviews that he didn't have a lot of content for dentists, but he took the clips out of there. He did blogs out of it. Boom. Within 2 months, you'd go to his website and you would have thought that he was the man. He was the accountant for dentists. And you could do the same thing for financial advisors too.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that our audience is like, it sounds like Tom is talking about that I should have a niche in order to make it so that people understand that I'm speaking their language. And there could be some people listening right now. There's dentist podcasts. Oh my God. There is a podcast in every niche, every genre, anything that you want, which is why it can be such a powerful marketing technique. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground. I'm going to ask you my favorite question that I ask a lot of the people who come on the show, because as you know, I try to prepare for this and I try to make sure I know what questions I'm going to ask you, but what question should I have asked you that I didn't?
Probably who it won't work for.
Ooh,
right?
Oh yeah, do that.
There's the, everybody asks the frequently asked questions. No, I want the frequently unasked questions. And with our discovery calls, this is what I want to figure out. Are you one of the people that it won't work for? So one of them would be that it's all about you. It's ego. You just want to tell your story. It won't work there. The other one is if you're tracing transactions, right? If you're just trying to sell a small product, there are different ways to do that, right? Products are sold, services are bought. So if you're trying to sell the lifetime relationship with that too. Another one is, what is your client base, right? Are you open to regional or global, or do they have to live within drivable distance to you, right? You can use podcast interviews as a proof source, but don't think getting on a national interview that if somebody doesn't live within 10 miles of us in Kalamazoo, they're going to be your client. It's not going to be effective for that. So that's sort of the things to look at. Will this work for me? And the other thing is, like, I always look at, is someone humble and coachable, right? If they come to me and they're not sure, will this work? What value will I bring? I love those people because they come with a heart to serve. They come with a humble heart to share their experience. I had one person that came to me. I remember this. He says, "I'm so-and-so." And I'm like, "Who's that?" "Well, I was on national television in the 90s. And I'm like, "I'm sorry. I was in the Navy in the 90s. I had kids. I was working hard."
Yeah.
If you start with that, do you know who I am? No. And they don't want you there for it. You want to be approachable. So if that sounds like, and once again, marketing is supposed to be magnetic. I hope that attracted the right people and repelled the wrong people, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do on podcasts and in our marketing.
Yeah. Well, if anybody noticed a couple of things that Tom just dropped there, yes, him and I are both ex-Navy. And by the way, we live like 20 minutes from each other, which is so crazy when we first met, because we had met through LinkedIn. And you're like, wait a second, like, I live in Mattawan and you live in Portage. Like, I can almost throw a rock to your house. So anyway, I just think that's absolutely funny. Us Michiganders and Navy people need to stick together. Okay. Well, so if that last statement you just said, it doesn't make our audience run away, because some of you should run away.
Huh?
If somebody does want to engage you, where should they go and what should they do?
Yeah. So before, Matt had talked about how do you wrap up a podcast, and I talked about the welcome page and the 3 offers. This is what it looks like. If you want to go there and see what a welcome page looks like, say all of this information you can find at Interview Valet with a V.com/top advisors. There's a checklist, like an assessment that says 10 questions. Will podcast interview marketing work for you? I wrote a book called Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with the Targeted Interview Strategy. You can buy it on Amazon. If you want a free copy, go there. If you're in the States, I'll mail you a copy. If you're overseas, I'll email you a copy. And then finally, if you want to talk about this, if you want to see how could I use this in my business to build my brand, build my business, I'll put my calendar scheduling link there. All of that will be back at interviewvalet.com/top advisor.
Masterclass, brother. Thank you for that. Was such a good example. So listen, everybody, podcast guesting can be an absolutely fantastic strategy if you have the right intention, you have the right preparation, you have the right team by your side. I have, like I said at the top of the show, when people tell me that this is the strategy they want, I know that there are other agencies out there. I've been approached by some of those other agencies, and you just really need to find a good partner that fits with you. Here's the deal. If Tom's team and his personality at Interview Valet isn't what you want, this can still be an amazing strategy for you. You just need to find the right team who's going to help you achieve the right goals. I personally think Interview Valet is the team for you because a lot of the people they work with are people who provide advice for a living, and they are technically experts. And that's a great, great organization to work with. So, if you don't know and you kind of want to dip your toe in the water, we have an absolutely unbelievable resource in our PodRocket Influence Academy. It's actually a guesting sheet that will help you not only prepare, but also you prepare for people to come on your show. And so that's at thepodrocketacademy.com. So please make sure you check for that. So for Tom, everybody at Interview Valet, and all of us here at ProudMouth, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.